It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, it's your Real Estate Breakfast right across Australia and streaming property talk from Noosa to the Gold Coast to Coogee on the eastern beaches of Sydney. And good morning to wherever you're listening to us from, across Australia or any other country around the world. There's a lot of expats just literally everywhere. It is a Thursday morning, April the 23rd. Right now we're going to catch up with Simon Kuestenmacher. He is the co-founder of the Demographics Group. And a very good morning to you, Simon. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is the housing time bomb and structural inequality. You're talking about a two-speed economy. Australia is shifting from this bell curve, and I'll get you to explain to people about the bell curve to a U-shaped distribution. In other words, the middle class is shrinking while growth occurs at the top level, the asset-rich, and bottom level, the renters.
Exactly. So the idea is that back in the 60s, if you will, Australia resembled a bell curve with a gigantic middle class and a couple of poor people, a couple of rich people, but mostly a middle class society. And over the last 60 years, we turned this around into a U-shaped economy where the middle class keeps declining and you have more and more people at the bottom and at the top end of the food chain. And that leaves, of course, the housing market split in two. If you look at a median house in the 60s, most people did live in what resembled a median house, a brick veneer on a quarter-acre block. Most people grew up in kind of the same house. If you take the median house, the middle house in Australia today, the rich people wouldn't be seen dead in such a house. $1 million house in Sydney is nothing that a rich household would even consider. And the poor people, they couldn't even dream of moving into the median house. So you have the big demand on the housing market at both extremes of the market. And so we wonder sometimes when we walk along the nice beaches in Sydney, why there are so many really nice big homes being built if everyone is under pressure. Yes, it's true that everyone is suffering, if you will, or complaining about high fuel costs, high mortgage costs, but the pain is very much felt at one bottom of the spectrum, much more than at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, because Australia's housing market is designed to be, you say, expensive on purpose. You say that the system is quietly structured to support rising asset prices and the wealth of the top economic third. So people will go, oh, is that the reason why these properties are so expensive today?
Yes, it is. So if you think about house prices as part of a system, there are many, many stakeholders in this system that want house prices to go up. 3/4 of voters live in a house that they have a mortgage on or that they own outright. Obviously, this big majority of voters want house prices rather to go up than down. The rental stock, that the other 25% of Australia live in, is provided almost exclusively by mom and dad type landlords, 2.5 million of them. All of them voters for all intents and purposes. They obviously want their investment to go up rather than down. Our banks, well, they do not much more than hand out mortgages. They want those mortgages to be bigger and longer to make a good dollar. Then you, of course, have the whole real estate industry that benefits from higher rather than lower prices. If you build higher properties, more expensive properties, you have higher margins, which is important in a low margin industry. So there are plenty of people that want property prices to go up rather than down. The people that want prices to go down are poor people, young people, and they can be politically, you can ignore them for quite a long time. You can't really say it to them. You can't say to them, well, sucks to be you, better luck next life. So you come up with policies that look like they make housing more affordable, make house prices go down, while they do the opposite. First home buyer grants. Every economist knows that these grants drive house prices up rather than down. We could introduce policies to make housing cheaper, but it is, politically speaking, very, very difficult to pull this off.
You know, the last time we spoke was back in 2025, and we talked about baby boomers. The first baby boomer in 2026 was going to be turning 80 years of age. It is something that kind of crept up on everybody. We weren't prepared for this. I wonder just how, as a society, we are prepared for baby boomers in their droves starting to turn 80 years of age, because there are all sorts of things at play, especially what is it going to do to the health industry in Australia. A ton of more health requirements are needed. And then you've got the property and the distribution of what is going to happen probably over the next 5 years.
Absolutely. The next 5 years is a nice benchmark, because in 5 years, the oldest baby boomer will turn 85. And that, statistically speaking, is a very important marker. 80 is more of an important marker because you feel that you're in your 80s. So it's more of a psychological rather than a statistically relevant number, because 85 is where I get really obsessed with the data, because half of the population doesn't make it to 85. It's the median age of death. So half of us won't make it to 85. The other half of us that makes it past 85, half of this half needs care on a daily basis. So in the next 14 years, we're doubling the 85 plus cohort in this country from 600,000 people to 1.2 million people. It's guaranteed to happen, because we're neither exporting nor importing old people. Will we be able to pull this off? Spoiler alert, we won't. There's no chance in hell that we will get even close to be doing this. There is so much demand for aged care workers, so much demand for aged care homes, and retirement living will go through the roof as a property category. And we do, of course, know that migration plays an important part for this, because if you've ever been to an aged care home in the last couple of decades, you know that essentially every aged care worker under the age of 40 is imported from overseas. So if we were to limit migration into Australia, we would completely wreck an aged care system that is already essentially set to fail. So we are facing a rather dire situation for the aging elderly.
Yeah, really interesting, because you just go back to COVID-19, those 80-year-olds this year were 73 or thereabouts. So they weren't really thinking about 80, but it is such a major talking point. Now, we are talking to Simon, and when we come back, we're going to talk about first home buyers. They are getting older. That after this.
Decode the property market with insider knowledge and insights to better navigate your real estate journey. Let's explore together the power of real estate.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday. Nice to have your company. Simon is with us talking, well, baby boomers turning 80 this year. And we're going to look at first home buyers at the other end of the spectrum, because they, Simon, are getting older as essential housing costs outpace wage growth, which is a really big problem as time goes on.
Yeah, and so the idea that first home buyers get older is absolutely logical. If house prices keep going up, it takes longer to save money to begin with to actually afford that home, that down payment. We are now shifting more and more into a knowledge economy in Australia. That means we are sending more and more of our young people into the university system. This year, we will be sending 55% of our year 12 students straight into the university system. Some of them will only go to uni a couple of years later. So we'll easily end up with about 60% of our 18-year-olds going to university. That is huge, because instead of earning at 18 and starting to accumulate a bit of money towards a down payment, you go to uni for one more degree. You only start earning in your mid-20s, and all the while you have a big mountain of debt that you carry around with you, student loans. So that alone pushes first home buyership towards the older years, and that has consequences. That further delays things like first childbirth. These are real societal issues that are linked to the housing market.
Yes, and if you are listening and talking to your friends about migration and just how much of a problem migration is when it comes to property prices, is migration linked to property prices? Well, you say, Simon, that you're challenging the idea that cutting migration is going to fix housing stress. immigration is a necessary driver for the economy, and you note that the shortage is deeper, rooted in planning constraints and construction capacity.
Yeah, so and of course it is true that every Australian migrant needs to be housed. The argument that is being put forward is too simplistic. We say, let's cut migration by 100,000 net new migrants. That means we need about 40,000 fewer dwellings. This should drive down house prices. Well, during the pandemic years, we've seen net negative migration. We actually had outwards migration of Australia, and house prices still went up. Yes, this was a low interest rate environment, but it also points to the whole idea that we want housing to be expensive. You only put housing to the market as a developer when there is enough demand for it, because you need certain prices. The idea that you take migration out and prices will go down, we want house prices to go up rather than down. And as long as the whole policy settings actually favor expensive housing, I'm not convinced that lower migration would actually result in lower house prices, because the system doesn't want house prices to be lower. If we were to cut migration, however, we create all types of other problems. First and foremost, we worsen the skills shortage in essentially every industry. At the moment, we see this. We see that, yes, we have economic pressures, but we still have low unemployment. We wouldn't have anywhere near enough workers if we were to cut migration. 52%, 53% at the last budget was income tax. And about 69% of migrants pay income tax, and only 49% of Australian-born people pay income tax. So if you minimize the migration intake, you must link this to a complete tax reform. You must double GST. You must introduce a wealth tax. And without a major structural tax reform, the idea of cutting migration is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and then we have a look at what is going on around the world. It's very volatile. 2026, here we are, the Strait of Hormuz. We've got the oil problem, the gas prices. We've got the rising cost of food right across the board, utilities. Then you've got to pay your mortgage, your rents. You've got the RBA next month. They're going to be addressing the cash rate. Man, oh man, compared to 2025, this is a different story that we're faced with this year.
It is. I understand why listeners might feel depressed if they read the news about all those horrible things that you just listed. But I want to remind everyone about the country that we are talking about. The business model of Australia is very, very simple. The Global Economic Complexity Index ranks 130 countries by just how complex the economy is, and we rank 105th between Botswana and the Ivory Coast. We are not a complex economy, but what we do well, and we do only four things. We are a mining powerhouse, we are an agricultural powerhouse, we entertain people, that's tourism, and we educate people, international education. These four pillars are in the long term not at structural risk. Food prices globally are set to escalate. We do not need to reinvent our economic model. So I guess we remain the lucky country. We must keep this in mind as we talk about the future of Australia as well.
All right, the lucky country. We'll wrap it up there on a nice positive, Simon. Thank you so much for coming back onto the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. It is a Thursday. Enjoy your day and talk again soon.
Absolutely. It's been a big pleasure.
We help to break down real estate every day to help you better understand the Australian property market.
The RBA, they're saying that it's a bit of a triple whammy, and we've got them addressing the cash rate next month. So what do you think is likely to happen?
Some segments of the marketplace certainly acknowledge those changes, but they have a more long view of property. And we're seeing that right now, actually, with investors.
We want to get on to this whole subject of why investors at the moment are roaring back into Victoria despite low confidence.
I think you're accurate in how you described it, Craig. They are roaring back. The uptick in inquiry from interstate has been significant. Most of these investors are aware of the challenges, but they have the long view and they're looking at where Melbourne is on the property clock. The conversations I've had with a lot of them is, look, Brisbane's Brisbane's moved, Sydney we can't afford, Perth's moved, property clock is sitting at the right position for Melbourne.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.